The LA Rams attempt to improve to 2-0 this week as they head to Tennessee to take on this year's #1 overall pick in Cam Ward. Now, I'll be giving my thoughts on some key matchups, some players to watch, and how I see this game going. But as you guys know, I can't do this thing alone. I need your guys' help. If you guys could put in the comments who you think is going to win this game, who are going to be some standout players for whatever team ends up winning. And if you feel like it, drop a score prediction down in the comments below as well. Now, it's important to note I am recording this video on Tuesday of game week, and these injuries could change for sure as the week goes on. But as we note right now, both starting guards for the Los Angeles Rams in Steve Avila and Kevin Dotson are questionable this week with ankle sprain injuries. These would be huge losses as Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat on the inside are going to be a handful to deal with. So I'm hoping we get our guys here on the interior back in this game. But we are not the only ones dealing with injuries, especially on the offensive line. J.C. Latham, second-year pro for the Tennessee Titans, did go out of that Broncos game last week and is questionable for this week with a hip injury. Definitely something to keep an eye on, as that would be the matchup that Byron Young would be having to go up against if he did not play. Now let's get away from those injuries and talk about a fun thing here real quick. Got some fun familiar faces to see here as Rams fans. We're going to be seeing 4 former Sean McVay Rams here suiting up for the Titans and coaching for the Titans this week. Got to start with the classic and Coach Bones. Love that guy. He brought so much excitement and energy to the special teams unit. He will be their new special teams coordinator. And of course, you can't have Coach Bones without Johnny Hekker. Johnny Hekker, longtime punter for the Rams. The reason probably a lot of us Rams fans watched in that St. Louis era, will be punting for the Tennessee Titans. You got wide receiver Van Jefferson, former Super Bowl champion, along with Johnny Hekker, of course, Super Bowl champions. And another Super Bowl champion, Sebastian Joseph Day, who is going to be taking the field. So look out for those familiar faces as the Rams take the field on Sunday. Now, when you look at the Rams offense last week, it did disappoint a lot of Rams fans in the fact that we put up 14 points. But I think a lot of Rams fans are first off discrediting the fact that we got the win in the end. But on top of that, we were playing an elite defense, probably a defense that is going to finish top 5 in the NFL in the Houston Texans. They were just a dominant unit. And on top of that, the Rams starters never play in preseason, so the start of the year for the offense is typically a lot slower until they get into their rhythm. So that's another reason why they probably only put up 14 points. Then you take into account that the Rams were shuffling on the interior of the offensive line with the injuries that we were facing against that kind of pass rush. You had Stafford, who missed most of the camp, which really didn't look like it bothered him, but maybe that messed with a little bit of the rhythm of the offense and the chemistry with Davante Adams that he could have had. You also had some big plays that the Rams had that were just called back due to flags there, so there was just a lot of different factors. And when you look at the Rams, especially if you're a Titans fan watching this video, the 14 points I don't think is something to reflect that the Rams are just a bad offense. I think they were just shaking off the rust, playing a really good defense, had some injuries on the offensive line, some big plays were called back with the flags. Yeah, they were rusty and they were shaky to start off, but I think they're getting better as the season goes on. I still have high expectations for this Rams offense. It's not going to be one week that it's going to make me think all of a sudden now we're just a bad offense. No, that was a good defense, and all those factors I mentioned did play into account. Now we got some interesting stats here for the Tennessee Titans defense last year. The Titans defense ranked 2nd in total yards last year, 26th in rush yards allowed, 2nd in pass yards allowed, and 30th in points allowed. Now it's really interesting when you take a closer look at these stats. You'll notice that their defense ranked 2nd in total yards last year, but yet they were 30th in points allowed. How could this be? Well, the Titans in 2024 did have a very poor special teams unit. That's kind of why they brought in Bones Fossil and Johnny Hekker. But they were also a team that was just having lackluster offensive performance filled with a bunch of turnovers, and they really gave offenses short fields to work with. So yes, this Titans defense did rank 2nd in total yards allowed last year, but you also have to have that context in there that a lot of teams were having very short fields to work with, which kind of contributed to this. And an interesting stat that I found when looking at this defense from last year, this team led up the most points by any #1 ranking total defense in yards allowed. So obviously very contrasting stats there when you look at that. And while they were 2nd in pass yards allowed last year as well, and that was definitely some credit to them as well, that also does go back to the short fields. You're not going to have to pass the ball very much and get a bunch of yards racked up if you already are in great field position. So their pass defense definitely was good last year, but I think there's some context to be added there. If I'm being honest, when I was doing research for this game and seeing where the team stacked up last year on the defensive side of the ball, I was very very surprised to see their run defense ranked 26th in the NFL in yards per game. When you just look at the defense on paper with T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons and Sebastian Joseph Day, as well as their scheme, I would have thought that they would have been one of the top run defenses against just rushing yards allowed. So the fact that they ranked 26th was very surprising to me. If you're a Titans fan and you're watching this video, definitely give me some context on why they ranked 26th against the run, because you would think just looking on paper, especially on that interior, that they would have been better. For the Titans defense, you have some big names that most NFL fans should know and you should keep your eye out for. Jeffrey Simmons, of course, T'Vondre Sweat, L'Jarius Sneed, Quandre Diggs, and Amani Hooker. And I know I keep talking about him, but Jeffrey Simmons can absolutely wreck a game. I think he's one of the most underrated players across the NFL, and the Rams experienced that firsthand in that 2021 season when we played him. He was like the sole reason our offense was not working that game. He can just completely dismantle a team's plan, and he can do that both versus the run and versus the pass, which is even scarier. I think L'Jarius Sneed versus Davante Adams is going to be a very fun matchup to watch, just because L'Jarius Sneed, obviously he's a press guy, he's a man guy, very sticky, even grabby at times corner, going up against one of the better route runners and release package players in the league in Davante Adams. I think that's going to be fun to watch. Now, a big thing I'm going to be watching in this game on the Rams offensive side of the ball is, can we establish the run game? I still have a hard time looking at the rankings last year for the Tennessee Titans defense and seeing they ranked in the bottom third of the league when it came to the run defense. When you have guys like Jeffrey Simmons, T'Vondre Sweat, and Sebastian Joseph Day, especially in that middle part of the defense, I think that would clog up a lot of the run lanes that would be there. So the fact they ranked so low there, if that's really a weakness for the team, I think the Rams are going to have to hit that with Kyren Williams and with the duo and the inside runs that we do and that he does so well. When I was doing my research, I was just kind of finding information about their new linebacker in Cody Barton. He used to play safety and is more of a coverage kind of guy, very sure tackler, but they did mention that he struggles with shedding the blocks. And in the duo run game and the quick runs that we'd like to hit right up the middle, those are the ones where the offensive linemen get right up the field right away, get hands on the linebackers and the second level defenders as soon as they can. So I think this could be, as long as we get past the first level of Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat, which we'll see how that goes, that's going to be something that will be interesting to watch, to see, can the Rams establish that run game? Again, if you're a Titans fan, if you could let me know down below why they ranked so low against the run last year, I would greatly appreciate it, because I'm very curious. I really do think that this Rams passing attack could get unlocked this week, but it all hinges upon the interior of that offensive line. That is the strength of this defense, and if you can't block those guys, you're going to have the game blown up. Again, I referenced that 2021 game against the Tennessee Titans that we faced. They just completely lit up our game plan, and our passing attack was just nowhere to be found because it was just being disrupted right away. You're going to need to get all your hands on Jeffrey Simmons right away, because he can just blow up a game right from that interior position. It's not to an Aaron Donald level, but just to give you guys like a framework and a perspective, that's kind of the kind of impact he can have, and he can take over a game. I can see the Rams passing attack being very successful this week on quick throws, but also on deep throws. It just comes down to how much time they give Stafford, and that's going to be a big key. Whatever ways the Rams can find to try to slow down that interior pass rush is going to be the biggest key, because while Arden Key is a decent pass rusher and he's the lead guy for them on the edge right now, he doesn't scare me, especially coming off of a week where we faced Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. Rob Havenstein and AJ Jackson actually held their own pretty well against those guys. I think that Arden Key is not a big concern. It's going to be that interior for me, and I'm going to say it all video. That's what I'm going to be looking at to see, can the Rams hold that up, because if they do, this could turn into a big win for the Rams. If you can find a way to block that interior, I really do think that this Rams offense could be doing basically anything that they want. Now, some key matchups for the Rams offense versus the Titans defense. I'm going to be starting off with the topic I'll be harping on all video, and that's Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat versus our interior offensive line. It's going to be something that's going to be very key for the game, in my opinion. Whether we have Kevin Dotson and Steve Avila starting and playing through the injuries or not, I think is going to be a very key thing that could change the whole impact of the game, because if you can't block up in the middle for both the run game and the passing game, bad things are going to happen. Next, I have the Rams run attack versus the Titans run defense. Just because of that being such a weakness for them last year, I'm very curious to see how that looks this year. Another thing that I was looking at when I was taking a look at the Titans starting linebacker Cody Barton, he obviously used to play safety. He's a little bit rangy in that way in pass coverage, but he does struggle against duo kind of running schemes that are just attacking run down the hill right at you, because he does struggle to shed blocks. So I think watching this run game, especially up the middle against T'Vondre Sweat, against Jeffrey Simmons, and against Cody Barton, is going to be a very interesting thing to watch. I think Matthew Stafford versus Quandre Diggs is going to be another fun one to watch. I remember in that Super Bowl year when Stafford first came to the Rams against the Seahawks, both games Quandre Diggs ended up having an interception interception against Matthew Stafford, of course, former teammate of his. He always just seems to be around the ball, or Stafford just threw it right to him. So that's going to be a fun matchup just to watch, just because of the history behind that. And lastly, another matchup that I'm very excited to watch is going to be Davante Adams versus L'Jarius Sneed. Look, L'Jarius Sneed loves to get in your face, loves to do press, loves his man coverage, loves to talk. He is all like that kind of alpha #1 corner kind of personality. And seeing that versus Davante Adams, who is a very crafty route runner, great releases, and he's kind of an alpha at that wide receiver position, I think that's going to be such a fun one to watch. What do you guys think? The Rams defense really did show out last week against the Houston Texans. Did not allow a touchdown, kept the Texans under double digits, kept CJ Stroud under 200 passing yards, kept the rushing game under 100 yards. They were all over the place, and on top of that, they got 2 turnovers, one with an interception and the other, of course, being Nate Landman poking out the ball and getting the game-winning peanut punch. This was very encouraging to see that the Rams defense picked up right where they left off last year and even got a little bit better, especially in the run defense. Now, it is important to keep in mind that the Texans were dealing with injuries up front on the offensive line, all across the line, and they didn't have a great line to begin with. That definitely contributed to it, because we could just get into CJ Stroud's face a lot quicker than he would like, kind of disrupt their offense as a whole. They had a new offensive coordinator, it's a new season, defenses typically start out hotter than offenses do, but still, you can't take away what the defense did, and they were doing these kinds of performances last year at the end of the year. So Rams defense is coming in hot, playing a rookie quarterback, a young team. I think this is a good matchup for us. The addition of Nate Landman was definitely felt last week against the run, obviously punching out that ball. It just always seemed like he was around the ball. Great addition at inside linebacker for the Rams. Cornerbacks really proved to be something to everybody who was saying that they should just cut them all and just start over. The cornerbacks in the secondary as a whole showed out. No part of that was the pass rush being so good, making their life a little bit easier, but they did definitely impress a lot of people. And again, I just love the fact that we are getting Cam Ward in only his second game of his NFL career with a defense like this that is ferocious, that is opportunistic, that is young and hungry. Now, while we're on the topic of Cam Ward, let's just break down some of the things that we can expect from him. I mean, obviously, he was the first overall pick of this year's draft for a reason. He's got crazy arm talent. You'll see him do a bunch of different kinds of arm angles. He can throw it with touch. He can throw it in there with a bunch of power on it. He can change up his kinds of throws. The arm talent is definitely not a question. Now, he's not known for his scrambling capabilities. He can scramble, and he does pull it out every now and then, but he looks to throw the ball more than anything. A lot of the times when he's scrambling, it's actually to extend a play and try to find a receiver downfield, and that's where some of the concerns come in with Cam Ward from college, and we saw this a little bit last week as well. He can try to force things into tight windows. He can play hero ball a little bit, hold onto the ball too long, force some throws, or again, hold onto the ball too long, take some hits, and that's where I think you're really looking at an advantage for the Rams defense this week. The fact that we get to play Cam Ward in only the second week of his NFL career with the kind of defense that we have should present some challenges for the rookie QB. Last week, Ward went 12 for 28 for 112 yards, no touchdowns, and he did end up taking 6 sacks. I will say though, just as an NFL fan in general, last week I saw some of these throws that Cam Ward was making, and they were very impressive throws that were simply being dropped, whether it was Chigga Okonkwo, whether it was Calvin Ridley. It felt like he was just finding those tight windows in those small area throws, and they just weren't rewarding him for it. So I did kind of feel bad for him last week. I think Cam Ward has some good upside. He just needs to get more of his consistency down. Obviously, still needs to get his feet wet in the NFL, and that's why I'm glad that the Rams are catching him at the right time right now. Only in week 2, he obviously went up against a great defense last week, and he gets to go against another really good defense in the Rams this week while he's still kind of learning this whole NFL thing. So taking a look at the stats for the Titans offense last year to give us a little bit of a framework to what to expect this year. Titans offense ranked 27th in points per game, 26th in offensive yards per game, 20th in rush yards per game, 25th in pass yards per game. A very mediocre kind of offense when you just look at the bare number. The Titans offensive line should be a lot better than what we were facing in the Texans offensive line. They've invested a little bit more into this position than what the Texans did. Obviously, they have J.C. Latham. We'll see if he ends up playing, but that was a high pick in last year's draft, a very high upside. They got Peter Skoronski, who is now playing guard for them. Did get drafted as a tackle, but a very high upside guard and has shown a lot so far. They brought in tackle Dan Moore from the Steelers, signed Kevin Zeitler. On paper, this offensive line does look a lot better, again, than what we faced last week against the Texans, and so it'll be a little bit more of a challenge. But when you even look at it in the game that the Titans just played against the Broncos, they did let up 6 sacks last week. How much of that was Cam Ward holding the football? How much of that was the offensive line being porous? You're going to have to let me know down below if you are a Titans fan. But this offensive line is definitely not unbeatable. I mean, the fact that they let up 6 sacks is definitely giving me hope that the Rams can get in there and make some havoc. Running backs Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears get used a lot in the passing game, and you're going to probably see a lot of dump off passes in there, some screens to them this game, especially to slow down that pass rush. But they're also not bad in the run game themselves. But the Rams defense did really impress me last week against the Texans with the new additions of Nate Landman and Poona Ford. Their run defense looked much improved, rallying to the football. I'm not too worried about them running the football against us, but do beware of those dump-off passes and the way they get involved in the passing game. Tony Pollard actually got some of the most receptions on the entire Titans team last year, even when you're counting in wide receivers and tight ends. I think he was like third or fourth when it came to receptions. And last week, oddly enough, I mean, he only had one reception, but he was leading the whole wide receiver room in yards with 29. So take that with what you will. They've got a very interesting wide receiver core in Calvin Ridley, obviously longtime veteran. Tyler Lockett, who came in from the Seahawks. We talked about Van Jefferson coming in from the Rams. And then Alec Ayomanor. He's a big body kind of rookie receiver. Not really the most threatening wide receiver room if you ask me, but hey, maybe I'm not looking at them in the way that I should. At tight end, they got Chig Okonkwo. He is actually a big part of this offense, both in last year and this year. It seems to be a guy who gets a lot of targets. He was up there as well with Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley as getting a bunch of targets. He is a guy that they're going to rely on a lot. And then they invested in getting Gunnar Helm, a rookie tight end this year as well. Now, the Titans did experience a lot of offensive woes against one of the better defenses in the NFL in the Denver Broncos last week. They only scored 12 points, did not score a touchdown, and they were 2 for 14 on third down. On top of that, Cam Ward was sacked 6 times. Now, with the Rams themselves having one of the better defenses in the NFL as well, I do expect the Titans to implement a lot of quick passes, screens, and try to get the run game going. I think that Cam Ward is going to be very up and down in this game. You're going to see some of those throws where your jaw just completely drops, and other ones where you're like, why is he throwing that, or why is he holding onto the ball? I do think it's going to be up and down. He hasn't shown consistency yet in the NFL. Obviously, this is only his second week in the NFL. The Rams got him at a good time. I think from a coaching perspective, the Titans are going to be trying to play it safe with him. I think the Titans are going to want to take a load off of him just as a young quarterback going up against a good defense. So again, seeing those quick passes, seeing those screen passes, get the run game going, let him take his shots here and there. But I think their approach is going to be trying not to make him do everything for their offense. But I do think that Cam Ward is going to just throw a couple unfortunate balls for Titans fans that will end up getting intercepted, or just throw it into harm's way to where the Rams are just going to continue to put their foot more on the throat of the Titans and continue to pull away where that small ball, conservative kind of offense just isn't going to work. I really do expect the Rams to be able to get 2 turnovers this week, just considering the kind of quarterback that they're playing, the new offense, young offense, and all of those different factors, especially with a guy who is kind of like a hero ball quarterback until proven otherwise. I expect us to get 2 interceptions this week. Now, some key matchups for the Rams defense versus the Titans offense. I think this whole Rams secondary versus Cam Ward is going to be fun to watch, because I'm very adamant that I think the Rams are going to get 1 to 2 turnovers via the passing game from Cam Ward, whether it be him trying to fit it in a tight window or just trying to do hero ball. And the Rams cornerback secondary as a whole is very slept on, so I think that's going to be a very fun one to watch, because I do believe we're going to get a couple turnovers. And lastly, my matchup to watch is going to be Byron Young versus whether it's JC Latham if he plays, or their backup there. Byron Young showed a lot of improvements last week versus the Titans, both in the run game and rushing the passer. Has a little bit more bend, and I think that's going to be a fun player to watch on that right side of the defensive line. I guess right side of the offensive line for the Titans. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, when we're talking about the outcome of this game, a lot of it, as far as the offensive side of the ball for the Rams, stems on that interior offensive and defensive line battle between the Rams and the Titans. I seriously think their interior defensive line could just completely break this game. They can stop the run, they can get after the passer and disrupt things, especially if we don't know the health of the guys on the inside with Kevin Dotson and Steve Avila. They could prove to disrupt this game. I think if we can at least minimize them a little bit or slow them down enough, I think the Rams can put up 24 points against this defense. They've got some names on that team, but I just don't know if I'm all that impressed with their team other than those guys on the interior. I just don't know how much they can handle this Rams offense. I really do think the Rams are going to get after Cam Ward, and they're going to catch him in some of those moments where he's holding onto the ball or trying to fit it into tight windows. I do think the Rams are going to get some sacks this game against Cam Ward, and I do expect a couple turnovers as well to set up the offense in good field position. And I think we're really just going to have control over this game, even if the offense is having trouble with that offensive and defensive line matchup. At the end of it, though, I do have the Rams winning 24-13 against the Titans. That's my overall thoughts of it. If you just take out that interior defensive line against this team, I think I would feel better about them dropping more points. And I do think the Rams drop 24 points simply because I think they'll be set up a couple times in better field position to score some points. And I do think that we're going to have our way a little bit more, maybe passing down the field a little bit. But let me know your thoughts. Those are my thoughts. I want to hear what you guys have to think, especially if you're a Titans fan. I'd love to hear your insight as well. Hey, but thank you guys so much for dropping dropping in. If you could hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, I would appreciate it. We're on the road to 4K. As always though, horns up and God bless.